Hi, I'm Cailey, a librarian here at Mentor Public Library.
And I'm Meg, also a librarian, and welcome to this week's edition of All Booked Up with Cailey and Meg, where each week we give you different book recommendations related to a specific theme. So I think this week's theme's pretty obvious. We are going to be looking at Christmas books. So all those cozy reads that'll get you in the mood for the season. We're going to have quite a few different ones, so we're excited to share that with you this week.
Yes, and as you may know, Mentor Public Library is currently closed to the public, but that doesn't mean you can't pick up some of these great reads through our drive-through, curbside, or a lot of them are available online for free with your library card through Libby or Hoopla. Meg, what is your first Christmas read?
So my first Christmas read takes us back to an all-time Christmas classic. It's called Mr. Dickens and His Carol by Samantha Silva. So it's like a piece of historical fiction, but it's cool because it's historical fiction blended with an actual really interesting true story, which is the story of how Charles Dickens came to actually write A Christmas Carol. So actually, the publishers wanted Charles Dickens to write a Christmas like a Christmas story, but initially Charles Dickens was very hesitant. He was reluctant. He was kind of a Scrooge himself. He was kind of grumpy about Christmas, a little cynical. So what's really cool is the author Silva. She creates this new character called Eleanor Lovejoy. And she is this mysterious character who kind of plays a similar role as the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future in A Christmas Carol. So it's almost like Charles Dickens going on his own Scrooge type journey. And I love that. I love historical fiction, but I've always really loved Charles Dickens and all his books. So I think this is really interesting look at Victorian era. It's actually an interesting look at how books were made at that era as well, like to look at the publishing houses and how those worked, and also just how popular Charles Dickens was in his day. He was like a superstar, one of the first like superstar authors. So I think that's also really interesting to look at. And then finally, it's evident that Samantha Silva really has an affection for both the author and the Christmas Carol story. I especially like even the character name Eleanor Lovejoy, just that classic way of naming characters, kind of a quirky name that also gives a hint at the character's personality and
That's
ultimate
true, yeah.
purpose. Yeah, so it's really fun, nice little details like that. And I think a lot of people who maybe know the story of A Christmas Carol, they'll learn a lot more about it and maybe gain a new appreciation for it. So
So it might be something good to read this time of year after you've read A Christmas Carol this year.
yeah, read both. And then, yeah, read the Christmas Carol first, and then this one is like gives you behind the scenes really good.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds awesome. I would definitely check that out. I love A Christmas Carol and I watch it in many iterations every year, including Mickey Mouse. My first book is a fiction tale. It is called 25 Days Till Christmas by Poppy Alexander. And this time of year is when I usually seek out at least one sweet, sappy sort of Christmas book. And, this is on top of my Hallmark and Christmas watching.
Yeah.
Um, well, this book was one I read last year. It just came out last year. And it's a sweet, little sappy, also a little bit sad, hopeful, and just a very engaging read. I will note that this is a British author, and the book does place in England, but it's easily relatable. But there are some few British holiday quirks that sort of pop up, like mince pies and things. This book is about Kate, who loved Christmas until relatively recently when her husband, who was in the military, passed away. And since then, she has been struggling to make ends meet with herself and her young son, Jack. But this year, she just really wants to make Jack have a memorable Christmas, however that may be. Obviously, she's not going to be able to do some sort of huge gifts thing for him, but she wants him to make lasting memories. And the way that she does this is that they have an advent calendar that Jack takes a piece of candy out each day. And also each day there is a Christmassy task for them to complete, which I just think is such a cute idea.
Yeah.
And some of them are very simple, like building a snowman or making pies, but there's also some about like doing something nice for somebody else. And there's different tasks each day, which I think is a nice thing. And then the other character in this book is Daniel, who is alone this Christmas for the first time after his younger sister, who had Down syndrome, passed away suddenly within the last year. And without his sister Zoe, he doesn't really feel like there's that much to look forward to this Christmas, as Christmas was her favorite. So everything sort of reminds him of her and makes him melancholy and miss her and things, including Kate, who he used to buy his Christmas tree from every year with her. The department store that she works at has a Christmas tree lot out front, and so he used to run into her every year, and he's always felt they've had a little bit of a connection. And this year they crossed paths several times. But this is not really like a romance sort of thing. This is really a book more about helping others and sort of trying to show that Christmas is not really all about the glitz and the glam, but so much more about who you're with and the things you do. So it's very sweet. It's got a little bit more meat to it than your traditional like Christmassy romance, but it's still uplifting, and it's one of those books that just kind of gives you that Christmassy feeling and maybe even will give you some festive ideas to add to your Christmas list this year.
Yeah, Cailey, that sounds like a really sweet one. And I agree with what you said, because I know we get all excited about, Christmas, a fun time of year, but it can also be, for a lot of people, it can be a really sad time of the year for a bunch of different reasons. So I think that's really nice to show the empathy and give hope, in this season. I mean, that's really what it's all, about. So yeah, that sounds like a really touching one. My next one is definitely also gives you the Hallmark vibes. It's very lighthearted. It's called The White Christmas Inn by Colleen Wright. And I think Hallmark lovers will find a cozy story reminiscent of their favorite holiday movies, but it also evokes a certain Christmas musical classic. It's kind of alluded to in the title, obviously. So there's a lot of similarities, and I think that's fun. As a classic movie fan, I think that's fun, first of all. But so the story takes place in a New England inn, and it seems like the picture-perfect place to spend the holidays. And there's 4 different characters who all try to come to this inn to find some sort of relief from, their day-to-day life for a variety of reasons. But of course, as fate would have it, there is a huge storm that happens, and it leaves everyone stuck inside the inn for much longer than they thought they were originally going to be there. So it has a lot of different relationship dynamics attached to that. So we start with Molly. Molly's our first character. She is an author who's staying at the inn as a way to try and cure her writer's blocks. So she's trying to find her next great story, but she's not having any luck. Unfortunately for her, in one sense, she runs into this very handsome widower named Marcus, who's staying at the inn with his 2 children. And that's just like the worst thing, because that's like a distraction. How is she going to finish her book when this guy's here? The next character is Hannah, and she is a woman who fantasizes about having a winter wedding, and she's about to get married, but then her fiance leaves her and calls everything off. And so she's really like distraught, but wouldn't you know, who happens to be also at the inn but her childhood friend Luke, who's been there. Now listen to this, kid. This is the cutest thing ever. Luke has come back home because he wants to check on his grandma before the storm. So he's back to check on his grandma. He's being such a nice guy. I just thought that was really cute. and then the last storyline is the owners of the inn, which is a married couple, Jean and Tim, and they are struggling to keep their business afloat, and can they even keep the inn open? And they're also at the same time trying to salvage their drifting apart marriage. So there's a lot of different relationships. It's kind of like it could be 2 or 3 different Hallmark movies, which is, I kind of think, fun in a way. It's just kind of like an explosion of Hallmark storyness. So it's just a fun one, kind of want to escape this one. Maybe not so unpredictable, but I think that's kind of the appeal of these kind of stories.
And I honestly, like, some of my favorite movies and books are the ones that have sort of multiple storylines that will interweave. So I enjoy those.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good one. And I
Yeah.
like the name, The White Christmas Inn, because I'm about to talk about some classic movies in my next book, including White Christmas. Um, so the next book that I have is called Christmas in the Movies, 30 Classics to Celebrate the Season by Jeremy Arnold. And this is a Turner Classic Movies book. So you know that I love Christmas movies.
Yeah.
And there's definitely some that I need to watch every single year,
Yeah.
like Home Alone and Elf and Miracle on 34th Street. You know, there's
Yeah.
all of those. But
So many.
when this book came through, I was bound to find it, and since it's done with Turner Classic Movies, you know that it is going to cover some great classics.
Yes.
And it goes through 30 Christmas classics from 1939 to 2003. The book came out in 2018, but I think more recent movies have to wait to attain that classic status, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So the way it's set up is it's set up chronologically. So the earliest movie in the book is 1939, last one is 2003. And
Okay.
each movie has a few pages of information, lots of pictures, plot summary, as well as some fun facts and stories about the movie. And I also love that the author includes for each movie a holiday moment pop out box at the end, which highlights a top scene from the movie that will evoke that holiday spirit. So there are some true classics in this book, like White
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yes.
There's also some like Miracle on 34th Street, which I learned filmed the real 1946 Macy's parade with 14 cameras along the route as part of their film.
Yeah.
The director was obsessed with making sure it all looked very realistic, and he even got to film inside Macy's, including the cafeteria.
Wow.
And A Christmas Story, which is that Cleveland classic.
Yes.
And it did not do good in the theaters at all, but had good reviews, and now obviously has gone on to be such a classic that it airs for
Wow.
24 hours on Christmas Day on
Yeah.
TNT and PBS.
Wow.
There's some modern classics like Elf and Love Actually that make the cut for this book, but I
Okay.
really enjoyed discovering some new Christmas classics in this book. There was one called I'll Be Seeing You, which featured a teenage Shirley Temple, which was called like her first grown-up role. And
Yeah.
I am very intrigued by that one. I'm going to have to look that one up. There's also one called Three Godfathers, which is the story of three bank robbers who rescue a baby and attempt to get him across the desert safely. Now, it doesn't sound like a Christmas movie, but I am hooked just by that description,
Yeah.
as well as the pictures in it. And it's sort of supposed to be a riff on the Three Wise Men. So it sounds like
Okay.
an interesting new one. But this is a great read to find out more about a bunch of Christmas classics, including a lot that I did not know about. And I do enjoy my Christmas movies, so I think that was fun too. And it's also just great if you're the sentimental Christmas movie watcher and you want to learn a little bit more about some of your favorites.
Yeah, yeah, I never knew that about Miracle on 34th Street, that they recorded an actual parade. Like, that is crazy. And like I said, I've actually looked at this book too as well, because we both love these type of movies, and
Yeah.
it's definitely fun to learn the facts, and also, a couple that you haven't seen. I will tell people I did just order Three Godfathers for the library, because I thought the same thing, that it seemed interesting. So we'll definitely put that one on hold. I'm curious about it too. So
Yes, so I would say that we have almost all of the movies from this here
yes,
at the library,
yes,
and some of them I think are even on Canopy, so that's
oh,
cool.
yes, too. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. I hope we helped get you in the Christmas spirit and that you find some good ideas for your reading. I know we had a lot of fun doing this one, so we do hope you have a happy and safe holiday season. And anything else you want to add, Keely?
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we wanted to do this early in the month so that you had time to
Yeah.
check these out.
Yes, exactly. So get your holds on those good books and movies. So
Yes, so we'll be back next week. And what's our theme next week, Meg?
Oh, yes. Next week, we're going to be doing teen sibling relationships. So, as the holidays are approaching, a lot of emphasis and family relationships. So, we're going to be looking at different books that show that dynamic for teens. So, we'll be looking at some good young adult books.
And we're all spending a lot more time with family this year, so hopefully we can find some good books that will emphasize that a little bit. All right,
Sounds good.
so we will see you next time. Happy holidays and happy reading.